This is the boardwalk at Osprey House, and I visited this spot a number of times before I began my mural work, just to get a sense of the place, a feel for the plant life and the animals, in particular the grey mangroves and their millions of aerial roots that you can see here. I've always found it really inspiring to visit a place in person before trying to make any kind of artistic impression of it. So here again are those mangrove roots under the water. The tide's out at this time and you're looking at the Pine River actually. So the barbecue area didn't actually have a wall to paint on, it had these poles that I needed to paint on. It's challenging to come up with a solution to work in the round and with designs that would be seen from multiple angles. You'll see how I tackled that a little later in the video. It took a little bit of looking back to art history. I started my design process the old-fashioned way with lots of paintings and drawings of the animals and plant life that were to be included in the murals. So the animals and plants were actually given to me. I didn't choose them, and it was a welcome challenge to have to draw and paint some things that I don't normally do. I used the chance to work out some nice pictorial shorthands that might translate over into a mural, things that had graphic strength. So high key colour and making sure to give the environments enough space in the design. I moved on to doing line drawings of all the things, I'm going to call them assets, that were to be included in the mural designs. So I started with nice clean crisp drawings of each subject and then backdrops that could be all combined to make convincing scenes. I worked in Photoshop to compile my drawings into overall designs, and I really tried to keep the colour palettes quite limited, something akin to Japanese woodblocks, and I wanted to emphasise the environmental details, like sink my subjects into the environment rather than just plonk them onto coloured backgrounds. The designs are tall and thin, with the idea being that they could be wrapped around the pole, and you'll see how I tackle that next. So I took those coloured designs and turned them into black and white versions, which were printed out at full size using the poster function in Adobe Acrobat. I tested them on a power pole in my street. You can see that these are actually just made from A4 sheets glued together. The next question was how to get this line work onto the pole. I looked to art history for a solution, and things like this cartoon, which would have helped an artist transfer their design onto the wall for a fresco. Little pinpricks are made in paper and charcoal dust is blown through the holes. So I tackled this with a 21st century approach, using a soldering iron to burn so many little holes into each one of my black and white printouts. The result looked like this, and I was able to use this template to test on a cardboard mock-up that I made to emulate the pole. I was happy enough with the result, so I decided to move forward. Here I am working on site, and I'm about to transfer one of my designs onto the pole. So I've done the upper part using the ladder and that elevated boardwalk you can see, but here I am working at ground level to paint onto the template and force that paint through the holes, giving me a series of dots I can follow beneath. I'm just making sure to get all the details captured, and you only get one shot at this because I'd never line it up again if I had to rewrap the pole. So I'm unwrapping here and I'm removing the thumbtacks that were holding the template up. What I have to do next is fill it all back in with permanent marker. Just in case it rains, I didn't want my lines to wash off. So I'm using a printed out guide to re-establish all the details of the work. And I was so thankful at this stage for the dots, because this would have been impossible without the reference. So here I am wrapping a taller pole and working my way down the design. was really a blessing to get this ladder, access to this ladder, and it enabled me to reposition some of my designs into higher placements than I'd originally planned. And I think it gave them maximum visual effect to lift them up off the ground level a bit more. Here I am unwrapping, and you can see the template's really large. It's taller than I am. And I was really chuffed with how this process worked. So here I am finally getting down to some colour. After days and days of priming and prepping, it was really great to just burst out into some colour. And I'm getting ready to paint one of the kingfisher subjects. You can just see in the background there my guide, my coloured guide that I'm working to. And I saved my subjects for last, so I'd painted in all the backgrounds on all the poles, getting the filler out first so I could really focus on the subjects in the last couple of days of the project. I thought this would make nice footage to have a look at too, rather than me just painting in miles and miles of mangroves. So there are two subjects on this pole, and I made sure to position one higher so you can see it from the boardwalk. Here I am painting in one of the eggs. So the other part of this job was to make this concrete pebble seating look like osprey eggs. And I used some photographic reference that I found that was taken by the cameras that are mounted above the osprey nest. The resident ospreys live in a nest here that has cameras mounted above it, so you get to see everything that they're doing, which is really cool. So the eggs start out white and get increasingly speckled as time goes on. And something that surprised me is that the reddish brown is very similar to the colour on an adult bird. So this is it, the finished site, and I thought this gave a really nice perspective on the job, just to see everything in context. And this is actually an amphitheatre that gets used for school groups that come through to learn about the mangroves. So I'm really keen to find out how kids enjoy the designs that I've done here. And that was always back of my mind as I was coming up with my concepts. The fact that I knew this was an educational space, so I wanted to be quite accurate with the way I portrayed the species that I'd been asked to include. Here is the giant osprey egg, and everything's had a coat of anti-graffiti varnish at this stage, which is a bit of peace of mind. And here's one of the rainbow bee eaters with a gorgeous plumage. I really tried to emulate the high key colour of the Photoshop designs that I'd come up with, so I worked hard to get luminosity in my colour, and that actually, funnily enough, involved the use of lots of white in my colour mixing. So I think that these days kids' attention is sort of captured by screen-based media, and I wanted my paintings to compete a little bit with that high key colour of the screen. And this one features the false water mouse. It's pretty cute. I learned about this creature for the first time when I took on this job. So it lives in a mud nest, and despite its name, well, actually maybe true to its name, one of the volunteers at Osprey House was telling me they can't swim. So they only go out to forage at low tide. I guess that's why it's called a false water mouse. And this pole also features ruby saltbush, which is an important salt marsh plant. Here's the pelican and mullets design. So again, having access to that ladder was great because I changed my mind when seeing the site and decided to take the design up higher on the pole so it could be seen from the boardwalk. This design probably best reflects my interest in Japanese prints. I think it strikes a really nice balance between flat colour and subtle tonal shifts. I was really pleased with this one. I think it's quite elegant. So next we'll head over to take a look at that pole with the kingfishers on it, the one you saw me painting earlier in this video. In this design I was sure to include two birds, so one's at ground level, kid height, and one's up higher so it can be seen from the boardwalk. While I was painting this particular pole, I actually noticed a number of birds, these kingfishers, out in the mangroves, so it was really nice to be working on the painting of them and see them at the same time. One last egg before we go. And this concludes the tour of the space. I hope you've enjoyed having a look at the mural commission that I've done at Osprey House. Thanks for watching. I'll leave you with a little bit of footage I captured of one of the ospreys up in the nest. It was so cool to see them up there every day. Be sure to check out my blog for more project details and subscribe to YouTube if you like content like this. Psst. Did you know I've started a Redbubble shop? You can find all my designs over there, so if you'd like to show your support, go and check it out.